What I would like to say is that, and so that we don't take away time from the main presentation, is that Yasmin quite correctly mentioned that you can get assistance from, in the SBIR program by registering and asking for assistance for the program. You're going to get things, lots of information here from the beginning program. And with the opportunity to look at it a second time, you're going to have more questions. Don't be afraid to call us back, register, and try to get your questions answered and so on. You might not be able to answer all the questions today, but make an appointment and you get a counselor assigned to you, and you can get all the questions and assistance that you need. So with that, let's start. The workshop today, the webinar today is going to cover these items. This is an overview or an outline of what we're going to talk about: mission, goals, history, the history of the programs, description of the programs. Both programs, SBIR and STTR, have 3 phases. That's the structure of the program, and the process of how those 3 phases work. We will go through that to make sure that that you follow it. We talk about eligibility, how you could be eligible, the criteria for eligibility in participating in either of the 2 programs, SBIR or STTR. The differences between the agencies, differences between the 2 programs, identification, a difference between contracting and granting agencies. Not all agencies provide contracts, and not all agencies provide grants. So, and then there's some important takeaway messages, and I will pose some questions that you might want to ask, and try to answer them myself, and then I'll answer your questions that you come up with. So let's get started, and we'll talk a little bit about the program objectives. Both the SBIR and STTR, their objective, both of the objectives, is to stimulate technological innovation amongst small businesses, private sector small businesses, and provide the government a cost-effective solution. The government has to go through research and development, and the government needs help to really get some of this research and development done. And a cost-effective way is to fund these programs and get small businesses involved in the development of technology that the government is designed or goaled or budgeted to perform. The government is looking for small businesses to help them to work on these technologies, challenging problems. And the program's objective also is to foster and develop new and cutting edge technologies, increase private commercialization of federal research and development. So after you help the government with solving research and development problems, technology problems, you can also take your solution and put it into the commercial world and sell it to commercial businesses as well. History. The SBIR program got started in 1982, and it was funded through the set-asides from research and development funds. 11 agencies participate, and they put 3% of their research and development budget, which into the program, the SBIR program, which amounts to about $2.5 billion. It's administered under certain titles and codes and so on, which that shouldn't trouble us at this point. But it's used to assist small businesses to perform and benefit from research and development. So small businesses get involved in research and development. Government sponsors the development. It works, and then the small business can sell it in a commercial environment, or the government might buy it. But you will see later on that the purchase, the commercialization, and the purchase of commercialized products is not part of the SBIR program. That's now moving into government contracting. And I'll explain more about that when we get to that part of the program. The STTR program also had its history somewhere back in 1992, 10 years later after the SBIR program. And it is to establish research and development in a different way. This is to establish research and development by non-profit organizations, universities, colleges, federal research development organizations, federal agencies, creators, and things like that. It's a little different from the SBIR program that asks the small businesses to work on developing these products, these technologies on their own with the funding. They get, in the STTR, small business can get assistance from a non-profit organization that is involved in research and development. Lots of universities have technology that they could participate in helping a small business to develop some aspect of their technologies, small businesses technology. So again, it's funded through the research and development funds, the extramural dollars that government agencies have for research and development. A portion of that is put aside for the STTR program, and that also comes from the 5 agencies fund SBIR, and not all of the agencies fund STTR, and we'll go through that when we get to those slides. Each year, 11 federal agencies and departments are required to reserve a portion of their R&D funds for award to small businesses. These agencies designate research and development topics and accept proposals. So the agencies know what they're working on, they know what they need help with, they put the information out there that we need help on these XYZ topics, and we're inviting small businesses to put in proposals as to whether they can help us with these topics or not. Okay. Small Business Innovation Research, the description of the SBIR program. It's a set-aside program, as we mentioned before, for small businesses to engage in federal research and development with the potential for commercializing the results of that research. 3% of the extramural research budget for all agencies with a budget greater than $100 million per year. So 3% of their total extramural or research budget goes towards the implementation and the funding of the SBIR program. A similar sister program, which is the STTR, facilitates cooperative research and development between small businesses concerns and U.S. research institutions, also with the potential for commercialization. 0.4% of the extramural research budget for all agencies with a budget greater than $1 billion, they participate in the funding of the STTR program. These are the agencies that we're talking about. There are 11 agencies, and they're all listed here. There are sub-agencies that are part of these agencies that are listed up here. For instance, the Department of Commerce has two major agencies that are not up here because it's not part of the main industry. I mean, the main 11 industries. But the Department of Commerce also has NOAA as an agency, and it has NIST as an agency. But they're not part of the 11 agencies that make a contribution to the SBIR and STTR programs. These are the dollars. This is not the agency's budget. These are the dollars from their budgets that go towards these programs. If you look at on the far left-hand side, it's the agency. The middle column, if we can call the next column over, is the money that they put into the programs, the SBIR and the STTR programs. And as I mentioned before, not all of the agencies participate in the STTR programs. Some agencies do SBIR, all of the agencies do SBIR, and only some of the agencies do STTR. And you could see which ones here that do STTR. DOD, Department of Health and Human Services, NIH, NASA, DOE, and National Science Foundations. Those are the top 5 with dollars. But I encourage you not to look just at who's got the most money. Look at the guiding force here is to look at who's asking for technology, for health and technology, with something that your company does. And that's how you make the decision which agency to go to, not who's got the big dollars and can they afford it. Because if what you do is not what they want, then it's an exercise in futility on both sides, both government agency as well as your small business. These are the 3 phases that I mentioned earlier. It's the structure of the program. Phase 1, funds, $252,000. Some agencies give less, but it has a lot to do with what budget you present to them. Maximizing $252,000. It might cost you to do a feasibility study, which is the purpose of phase 1. Demonstrate a feasibility. It might just cost you $150,000, and that's your budget should show that, and that's what you would get. If your budget showed $252,000 and it's justified, then you could get $252,000. That's what that means. Phase 2, it takes about 9 months to get a phase 1 done. 6 months to 9 months and that sometimes becomes a challenge or a disadvantage, because it takes 6 months working on that, and then small businesses, you have to consider what else are you working on to keep the business going. So you probably have to put a team together to work on that for 6 to 9 months, and then you want to look forward to perhaps getting a phase 2 if the government is satisfied with your feasibility study in phase 1. So phase 2 is $1.5 million or less, same concept. If your budget shows and justifies 1.5 million, well, you may get 1.5 million. If it shows that 500,000, 750,000, that's what you probably, and the government feels that it's justified, that's what you probably will get. It takes about 2 years, because what you're really looking for is to move from a feasibility study to developing a prototype. And it could be a report. It doesn't have to be a hardware prototype. It could be a report that proves and justifies and satisfies to the extent that you improve on the feasibility that you've done, that you've demonstrated before. Phase 3 funds, unlimited, but they're not SBIR funds. No SBIR funding there. So unlimited, no graduation period, no size limit, commercialization of the purpose is to commercialize the concept and the products, processes, and services that you come up with that you can commercialize and sell. But be aware that in the phase 3 program, depending on the agency, and even though this is not SBIR funds, it's not to develop a project, it's to buy the project that you have developed. So that's a contract that they would make with you, and it's not a grant. It's a contract that goes, if the government wanted to buy boots with steel tips for the war fighters, and they wanted somebody to design and manufacture boots with steel tips, and you've done that successfully, the government might decide to buy 500,000 of these boots to provide to the war fighters. If they didn't decide to buy it, or they didn't have the money in their budget to buy it, then you don't get a contract from the government, but you could still sell those boots to commercial companies, companies on the outside of the federal government. To participate in the program, there's a set of eligibility criteria, and government says that to be eligible, you must first be a small business, which the government says that the size of a small business is limited to 500 employees. That's small for the government. Lots of research and development companies are up, 4, 5, 6, 10. They're never going to get as far as research and development to 500 employees. The government has designated 500 employees or less as a small business. Government says that 51% must be owned by a U.S. citizen or a resident alien, a green card holder, permanent resident of the United States can participate in the SBIR program. And the business must be independently owned and not owned by a large corporation, and the small business has no say or part in it, either because they gave funding to the small business. The government will not fund a program that's independently meaning totally owned by a large business. Recently, they've made some changes to that says companies that are funded by venture capitalists but are partnering with small businesses. So the venture capital might own a part of the business, up to about 49%, or 51% of that business. If it's still owned by a small business, then the government says that you've met the criteria. You must be organized for profit, and a lot of times we see companies come in and say that they're a non-profit organization with a great idea, but the government doesn't fund non-profit organizations through these programs. PI, which is principal investigator or the researcher. So the owner of the company does not necessarily have to be the researcher, but they must get somebody that is a researcher called a principal investigator. And that principal investigator must be employed by the business 51% of his or her time. A lot of times those principal investigators come from colleges, they come from maybe some other company, but the challenge here is to get them to work 51% of their time with your small company. It doesn't include weekends trying to make up 51% of your time. It has to be 51% employment. And sometimes that's a challenge also when you're trying to get principal investigators from universities and colleges and things like that. They worry about tenure, and they can't afford to be away from their main occupation at the university for 50% of the time. So some of them have to take, if the project is interesting enough, many of them take sabbaticals, take a sabbatical for a year, take a sabbatical for 6 months, or something like that, because this project, phase 1 lasts for 6 months, phase 2 lasts for 9 months at least. So they take a sabbatical so that they could put in their 51% with a small company. The principal place of business must be in the U.S., not in India, not in China, not in any other place. Where you conduct your business must be in the U.S. All work must be performed in the U.S. A lot of times people think that you could get programmers from foreign countries with good skills, of course, and be part of their program and name them as part of the program. That can't work. That won't work because it doesn't meet the criteria. All work must be performed in the U.S. and not outside of the U.S. At least 2/3 of phase 1 and a half of phase 2 must be done by the proposing prime contract firm. So you can't sub out the whole project to some outside party or some outside team and get them to work on it. You pay them for doing it, and you turn the results over to the government. At least 2/3 in phase 1 stage to establish feasibility, and half of phase 2 must be done by the proposing prime contract firm or small business that's involved. Another thing that needs to meet the criteria is that you must own and control your own research facilities. Well, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you have centrifuges and different kinds of things and wind tunnels of your own for a 6-month project. But if you have to get a centrifuge or a wind tunnel, you partner, not do an SBIR, but you partner and do an STTR with one of the federal labs, like NASA, for instance, or the Air Force, because they have wind tunnels and so on. And there's something called a cradle, which is an agreement between a federal lab and a small business to conduct research and development and so on. So it could be done even though you don't own a centrifuge or a wind tunnel. But if you have a garage outfitted that can run the tests that you need to establish feasibility or to develop a prototype, and your garage is outfitted with good manufacturing processes and things like that, you could use your garage once you have it organized and say that that is your research facilities. You conduct research, your computers in your garage, the instruments and equipment that you need to build your prototype and so on, and you're doing the work in your garage or some part of your own home. That is a facility that is controlled by you, and that's where you do your research. STTR eligibility. Touched a little bit on that when I talked about centrifuges and wind tunnels. But it's organized as for-profit small businesses based in the U.S. So you still have to be a for-profit company. And you will notice throughout this particular slide that everything stays with the small business, either by choice, an agreement, or based on the fact that all the data and the technology and so on is agreed upon as to how it's going to be divided between the small business and the nonprofit research organization. Formal cooperative research and development efforts. Minimum 40% must be done by the small business and a minimum of 30% by the U.S. research institution. What's a U.S. research institution? College or university, a nonprofit research organization, a federal research and development center. And a federal research and development center could be a federal lab or a federal research and development center that's run maybe by some corporation that does just research for the federal government. So FR&DC is a prominent player in the STTR program because it satisfies a major portion of the eligibility. There's got to be an intellectual property agreement, because if you're going to get something done through a lab, a nonprofit organization, they have to make a contribution. They're going to make a 30%, a minimum of 30% contribution to your research institution, to your research that you're doing. Well, you might come in with an idea, and the idea does not totally satisfy what you, or you might come in with proprietary technology. You might even have a patent file. But when you come in and start to work with a research institution, you discover that you need something more than what you have to really make your technology work. And as the research institution starts to add things to that, you start to think in terms, do I get a new patent? Is this something new? Because it's changing what we're doing in a certain kind of way. And if we do, how much of it belongs to you and how much belongs to the research institution? All of that has to be agreed upon between the small business and the research institution. Agreement should be made and done based on intellectual property agreements. The allocation of rights in intellectual property and rights to carry out, meaning data rights, the things that you've written down and things like that, and the processes for executing your technology, that has to have agreements as to who's going to be doing that, and the research institution should be there as part of what you're trying to do as part of their 30% involvement. Follow-on research and development and commercialization effort. You might develop a prototype, but in order for it to work in the commercial world, you might still need some further development on your technology or your ID that you have. And you have to get the research institution to sign up to help you with that to get it commercialized. They have to commit. Because one of the major things that the federal government is looking for is not just to give money to solve problems that they have, but they want small businesses to succeed, to grow small businesses through this program and give them the funding or get them the funding that they need. So both of these programs call for a high involvement and high emphasis on commercialization. Are you able to commercialize this particular idea that you have? Whether we buy it from you or not, are you able to commercialize? Are you able to sell it to the private sector? So that's a big thing in your proposals and things that we help you to look at and look at that very carefully. The solicitation process, how the government does the solicitation. First thing that happens is that the agency releases the solicitation. And sometimes we call the solicitation a topic. The government says that we are looking for small businesses to help us do ABC. That's a topic or a solicitation, if you like. Because we give you a whole write-up as to what it is that they're trying to get done. You read the write-up and you make a decision. What we have and what we know can satisfy this need that the government has, this topic that they published. The applicant determines the agency and topic for submission. So what you do is you look at the agencies. You might pick 3 or 4 agencies that you believe in general satisfy. And based on research, not just believe in general, but based on research on what they've bought in the past, what they're buying, what kind of business that agency is in, what kinds of things it does. You say, this is an agency that if I had to get a job in one of these agencies, these are the 3 or 4 agencies that I think I could get a job based on what I know and what my expertise is. Excuse me. On what my expertise is. So the thing that you have to do is you have to determine the agency that you want to play with and what topics. When you see a topic, you say, this topic looks like us. We can do this. Now, we can do this meaning we don't have it yet, but based on the expertise that we have and the people that we have working around us, my team, we could satisfy the need that the government is asking for. We could respond to this. A lot of people look at the dollars that the agencies have as far as part of their budget towards SBIR and STTR and say, I'll follow the money, I'll go wherever the money is, and so on. But that doesn't do it. What does it is, are you satisfying the government needs? Do you have the expertise and the capability to satisfy the needs in this particular topic, in this particular agency? And that's what you have to look for, not who's got the big dollars. Small businesses prepare proposals. That's the 3rd step here. Prepare proposals based on the agency requirements. And this is a key statement. You prepare a proposal based on the agency requirements. A lot of times people come into us and talk to us about what they're trying to do, and when we dig into the agency requirements, they say, well, how are you going to do this? You know, I didn't notice that. I didn't think about that. You have to look at the agency requirements and build a proposal to meet the agency requirements. Once you've done that and you submit it to the agency evaluates the proposal. You know, and I'll tell you what are some of the criteria that they use for evaluating the proposal. The agency notifies, after it's evaluated, the agency notifies the applicant of the evaluation results. A lot of times what people do is they put a proposal in, a couple of things happen. The agency never responded to their proposal for different reasons. I'll tell you some different reasons, you know, before the webinar. The agency doesn't respond, so you don't get a response from the agency, and you say, well, I'll do another one another time. But what the agency owes you is what's called a debriefing. And they can do it by telephone, they could do it by mail, or they could do it in person. And there are different strategies for doing it in any one of those three areas that would yield success. But the agency is supposed to notify you, and then you should ask for a debriefing and say, you know, what really happened here? Or, you know, any input to us as to why we didn't get an award. But a lot of things have to happen when you don't get an award. Not only get a debriefing, but if you're satisfied that that agency is the one that issues topics that suits your company and suits the expertise that you have to keep looking. You have to keep looking at those two or three agencies that you pick to see if there's something new that has come up in this next schedule of publication of topics that you could work on. Without you changing your whole company, it might be a great fit for your company, except that you didn't bother to do research and discover that there's a topic out there that is made for your company. So you need to stay in touch with the agency once you put a proposal in and make sure that, you know, did you read it? We didn't read it because you didn't follow the instructions. You have 28 pages instead of 25 pages. Oops. And it doesn't get read. If you submit a proposal with 28 pages, when they typically all ask for 25 pages. So there are a number of things in there that creates a problem for you in the stage after you submit your proposal. There are things that you have to do, like the ones that I'm mentioning now, to make sure that, you know, there are things like the government may say that we're only going to give 2 awards for this particular project, but discover that there is in Congress a request for more funding for this same project. And a year later, more work comes out of that agency for this particular project, which might be either more or less suitable for your company. If you're not looking at that and looking to see if anything new is happening in your area of interest or agencies of interest, then you might miss it completely. Okay, let's move on to differences between agencies. There is solicitation logistics. What are the logistics as far as solicitation is concerned? How many solicitations in a year? Are all agencies doing the same thing, 2 or 3 per year? There are different windows of timing. So they're not all doing the same thing. Some do 2, some do 3, some do 1, with different windows of timing. It's not like every quarter is going to be so you have to know your agency and know when they're putting a schedule out with new solicitations. In agencies, most all of the agencies, the topic areas are either broad or focused. They go from broad to focused. An agency like, give you an example, an agency like NIH. NIH is an agency where your focus is very broad. It's not, I mean, it's very broad. It's not focused. But broad in the sense that, and everybody's getting an education now on this COVID-19, where there are hundreds of companies putting their bid and their decision that they could find a vaccine to fix the COVID-19. So they're not looking at one company or 2 companies. They're looking at everybody that can provide a vaccine. When you had SARS, when you had anthrax, those provided vaccines that the government wanted, and they bought some. NIH does not typically buy anything for the CDC, but they bought some. But the whole idea is that you can't have too many vaccines for something that you don't know too much about. So they entertain proposals for vaccines. And so the common cold and influenza has more vaccines than you can shake a stick at. And you hear them changing every year. They add stronger strength, and this vaccine is better for older people than it is for younger people. And this one is better for babies. And they keep getting proposals. People keep saying, you know, I have a new idea for this vaccine. We've discovered something new. So it's broadly focused, I mean, it's not focused. It is broad. It is requirements and its application. There are other agencies that are broad and focused. DOE is broad and focused, but there's a little difference. There's a little difference in DOE. It is broad and not so focused because they're trying to solve energy problems, which are always going to be with us. And then there's some agencies that are very focused. So it's mostly the DOD type agencies that are very focused. DOD says we're looking for boots, field boots for the troops, the war fighters, with steel tips that are not magnetized, that can't be magnetized to trigger these devices that are buried in the ground. Well, you can't propose anything other than that. There's no breadth in that. It can't be broad. It's got to be exactly that. And then you have to give a demonstration where they plant an IED in the ground, and you coming with your boots that you said that this protects the war fighter. You have to walk the line with the IEDs. Not anything as drastic as that, but you have to prove that it does exactly. That was only an example, but that it does exactly what the topic is asking for. Exactly. And that's a focused industry. The industry is like DOD with all its segments: Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and so on. They're all focused on the war fighters, on people who are engaged in doing something and protecting them and giving them the tools that they need to get this job done. So topic areas are either broad or focused. Another agency where topic areas are broad is National Science Foundation. It's a good place to look because you see all kinds of things in National Science Foundation. But they, like NIH, don't buy anything. They give you the money to do the research. Once you get the research and it comes out great, you're doing the research for the government, but you're also doing it for yourself because you could sell it commercially to commercialized institutions. Proposal logistics. What are the logistics around proposal? Well, the proposal preparation instructions. There's no unified application process between agencies. This is the process and this is work for all agencies. So the bottom line is if you're working with 3 agencies, they're all 3 agencies that you feel that they do things or they need things that comes along your line of expertise, you still have to read and understand the instructions in the proposal because no matter what, they're all going to be different. All going to be different. 25 pages. We don't want more than 25 pages. We don't want any appendices in any of the proposals. Yeah, we will do appendices, maybe. It must be a 1-inch margin. These are all factual type things that the government asks for. And if you don't read it carefully, you get thrown out. Your proposal gets thrown out just based on the fact that you didn't have a 1-inch margin. And they have templates. They put the proposal on a template and say, this doesn't meet the 1-inch margin, put it aside. We're not even going to read it. And this is a fact. This is our experience as far as proposals and reasons why they weren't considered, is that they can't follow government rules and regulations. How do you expect to work with the government if you can't follow all these bureaucratic rules and regulations that the government has? So there's no uniform application process. There's no uniform proposal review process. Some agencies have external reviews, external peer reviews. If your business is in medicine and you're at NIH, then you get people from outside who know something about the medicine that you're proposing, the vaccine or whatever it is that you're proposing, to sit on the review panel. Or if you're in DOD, it's a lot more technically but loose. Go around the office and say, we've got a proposal to review today, and you find people that are in the area, that work in the area of your expertise or of the proposal, and you ask for volunteers, and 2 or 3 people volunteer from this department and that department, and then they put a proposal review team together, and that's how you get reviewed with certain agencies. Proposal success rate. It varies, but not too much. It varies slightly between agencies. The overall success rate is like 1 in 9. Where I just retired from the University of Maryland, we had 1 in 7, which was a better rating than the overall rating, 1 in 9. But you have to be, and the other part of it is that Maryland enjoys a good award. We're number 10 amongst the states that get awards in SBIR and STTRs. So you got 50 states, 51 states, however you count them. You have, and we're number 10. So we're not doing too badly. And if you stay with us, we're doing 1 in 7. So your chances are that you can do a lot better working with a PTAC or SBIR counselor or support person. So that's the program differences between agencies as far as solicitation logistics and proposal logistics. There are other considerations. Read and reread the solicitation. I mentioned before that people don't read the solicitation. They don't read all the details of the solicitation. They don't challenge themselves on areas that they feel that challenge themselves on areas that they feel that they didn't understand. Get the solicitation early and ask questions. You can ask government questions. You can ask the program manager in the SBIR program office. There is a period of time that you can ask questions, and when that period is closed, you can't ask questions anymore. But the whole meeting, the whole road shows, and a lot of different kinds of things. And if you go to a road show and there's a speaker from one, and there's speakers from almost every agency at a road show, and if you ask a speaker about a particular question, a particular topic that they have out, he might give an answer that is a public answer. Then it's at the podium, he might give an answer. But if you figure out how to do it, you can ask for a meeting. Tell them that this is a very brief meeting that I would like to ask 2 or 3 questions. And they might give you a meeting, but nevertheless, they have to publish the questions that you ask, so that everybody is not slanted just towards you. Everybody knows what questions you ask and what answers you give. But the bottom line is that you know that the questions that you're asking are vital for your company, and you know that this is a competitive situation, so you still have to ask the question and understand that there's going to be some competition here. There's going to be some competition. You must be willing to devote 100 to 200 hours or more preparing the application. Lots of people feel that I'll knock this out in a couple of days and just submit it. And you wait and wait and wait and wait until you can't ask any more questions because the deadline for asking questions has come and gone. The deadline for submission, where the solicitation is going to be closed, is coming and it's hard upon you. Got a lot of things to do, and somehow you didn't put a program management plan for this proposal together. Every proposal that you have in the shop should be working off of a program manager, programmatic approach. What gets done now and by whom and when. Must be willing to devote 100 to 200 hours. Well, that's about 15 days between those two numbers that you need to have set aside. Not set aside, but you need to weave it into what you're doing. And you could only do that by way of a schedule of your own, a program plan for the team that you have so that people are available for you all to work on this thing. You must have reviews, red team review, the yellow team review, and the blue team review, and green team rather review. I'm looking at it like a traffic light situation. The first hard scrub is going to be a red team review. Dig in and you get all the bad news and or whatever that people have to say that needs improving. And you might have more than one red team review because you might try to improve some things and it didn't come up with satisfaction of the red team reviewers. So you got to go back to the table because they explain different and better or add something that they didn't add in the first place. So if you get through the red team, you're going to go through the yellow or amber team. And once you get through that, then you got a blue team review, and you have to have criteria of what these reviews need to satisfy. Sounds like a lot of, at this stage, a lot of technical stuff, but this is why you have support. That is why you need to spend time with an SBIR counselor, because the bottom line is that the counselor can look at your program plan, your programmatic program plan, can help with suggestions, can read your reviews, and make comment on them. Tell you where you think, you might come back and say, well, I had 2 red team reviews, but they're not satisfied with it, and I don't understand. You say, let me read it, I'll take a look at it, and say, what is it you don't understand? And I'll tell you, this is why you don't understand it, because what they're saying is this, and what you're doing is that, and then these two need to be reconciled. So a counselor is a valuable resource in the process of the SBIR and STTR program. Okay. The award may be a grant or contract depending on the agency, and you have to decide: are you going to spend your time on? Why are you going to spend your time on something that is a grant, just to do the research and just to do the development of a prototype? Why are you doing that? Well, the reason why you might do something like that and just get money, because it's not a grant. There's no grant money in there. They're both free. Grants and contracts are not the same. A contract is where you get the grant first to do the research, and then the agency that you're dealing with buys what you come up with. Spend money to buy it in a contract is what you come up with. You came up with the boots with the steel tips, and it protects the warfighter from the IEDs in the field. And you've done your research, you've got your report, you've got your prototype, and then the government says, we're going to buy 500,000 of these. That's a grant moving into the world of a contract. There's some agencies that all you get is a grant. National Science Foundation, this is best thing since sliced bread, that you could take muddy running water, dirty water, and turn it into pure drinking, consumable water in places where they don't have clean water to drink or to cook with. Well, NSF is not going to buy that from you, but you probably could sell that to some engineering company, hydro engineering company that wants to do that work and have the facilities for doing that work, and you bring your technology to them and they say, let's do it. So you could do a grant if you could see at the end of the light at the end of the tunnel that says, if I do this grant and I can develop this concept and this idea that I have, then I'll be able to sell it to major large companies. That's why I'm doing a grant and not something that would result in a contract.
Because I don't know if the government is going to have money at the end of my phase 2 to buy what I'm selling, to buy it under contract. They may run out of money and they got to wait for another 2 years before they get some money. But if this is something that you could get a grant to develop this product all the way to a prototype, and you know that companies, you've done your homework, you talk to companies out there, they have a need, just like the government has a need. They have a need, so we could use that. Then that's who you want to sell to. As far as getting a contract, not in the government, but outside of the government, using grant money to develop the product. Okay? I said this in different ways before, but it says, be attentive to the solicitation topic. Be attentive. And why you want to pay attention to the solicitation topic, it might be something that is following a trend. That the government is trying to get something done based on things that are trending. Now, what's trending? The environmental stuff is trending. It's getting better, it's getting worse, it's not improving. Excuse me. It's not improving. And so those are trends. So you have to pay attention to topics. Did anybody receive an award for this particular topic? It might be along your lines. Was this published before? And was an award made? If an award was made, how long ago? And if a phase 1 award was made and they're into phase 2 the proposal, you might be able to partner with that company if you knew that that was happening, to lend your expertise to their team because it's along your lines. And you could do that in phase 1 or phase 2. So let's say you applied for a phase 1 and you didn't win, but you knew which company won the phase 1, and that's part of your debriefing. Who won? And you talk to that company and say, look, we applied too, we didn't win, but how are you making out? Here's what we do, and can you use our expertise as part of your team? So you might become part of consultant to their team for their phase 1, or consultant to their team for phase 2. But you have to pay attention to what the solicitation is all about. And then it says solicitation, not the words of the topic that's published, but what happened with it. Was it awarded? To whom was it awarded? How long ago was it awarded? It was never awarded. I'm dealing with a client now where they submitted a proposal in March of 2019. And they're come back to me and say, well, I never got an award and I never got a debriefing. And, but I've seen another proposal that looks a little bit like it, but I'm going to go after that one. And I said, well, let me take a look and see what's going on. I took a look, and the one that they saw that they're going to go after is no longer in play. But the one that they didn't get an award on for March 2019 has been re-released. And I said, well, is there anything different in this re-release topic that wasn't in March of 2019? And I don't know, I didn't see that. Let's take a look at that, because you might be halfway through with a good proposal, but you have to read the topic and see if they're asking for anything different or anything else. So you got to pay attention to the solicitation topic. Be aware of allowable costs. A lot of times people think that the government is giving them money and they could use the money to buy and spend and do whatever. I could build out my lab, or do my research in some kind of fancy area, and I have to pay for expenses to drive to the area every day, and I'll include that in my cost. Well, the government, there's an agency called DCA, and DCA is the government contracting and auditing arm. And if you win an award
or any contract that's $500 or more, you're a good candidate for an audit from DCA. But DCA has regulations published, and everybody should try to take a look at some of those regulations, and they have sections that deal with SBIRs and so on. And to see what the government will allow as far as what you put in your budget. See what the legal costs. Well, the government is not going to pay for your patent, $10,000 for a patent, $15,000 for a patent, for something that you're working on to submit a proposal to them. But there might be some legal costs that you could get paid for, but it's not for your patent. It's not for furniture for your office, because you have to get a team to come in and work, and you have to have a place for them to sit on a desk for them to write that. So you have to know what's allowable and what's what they call unallowable. So be aware of allowable and unallowable costs, and complete all required registrations. Be aware by agency, the agencies that you select. And if you follow the money, there are going to be at least 5 agencies that have big money in their research and development. So they're looking at a lot of research and development topics. But at least 11 agencies are looking at SBIR topics. And they have budgets that are more than $1 million, but not more than $1 billion. So if you want to play with all the agencies or too many agencies, there are a lot of registrations that you have to address. And we look at some of them now. These are the registrations that you have to address. And you could see the kinds of registration, the registration type, the EIN registration, who needs it, DUNS, if you're doing contracts with the government now, right now, or applications and so on, you know what a DUNS number is, you know. These are all small business type things. But the SBIR.gov, the SBA has a registration that you have to have. And if you notice, it's X right across all agencies. SAMS, we all know how powerful SAMS is in the whole CCR registration. Grants.gov, not a lot of agencies use grants.gov for their solicitation and submission. But if you look at some of the agencies like NIH, use grants.gov. Department of Energy, use grants.gov. And the USDA and the DOE, those agencies don't buy anything. They don't buy a lot of stuff. They give a lot of grants, but they don't buy anything. And the bottom line is that grants.gov is very complex. It is not an easy thing. You have to have somebody that knows, or you have to familiarize yourself with how to make a submission using grants.gov. The mechanics of making submission using grants.gov. Because if you wait until the last minute, 2 days before, to submit your proposal using grants.gov, and you have a hiccup in the system, and the system hiccups a lot. Hiccups a lot. And if you're making a submission through grants.gov, the bottom line is that you might be put off 2 or 3 days before they can get a remedy for it, or you can get somebody to talk to you intelligently, not intelligently, but devote the time to help you out with whatever problem you might be having in grants.gov. Submit early, give yourself some time to address hiccups that you might have in submission of grants.gov. The e-commerce, NIH, and NIH has like 50-something agencies that do grants. So if you're doing NIH, you figure out which agencies you're going to work, sub-agencies you're going to work with, and you know, follow that. Fast lane, NSF, they do fast lane. So you have to register for fast lane with NSF. The SBIR Defense Business Organization.
So these are all the agencies, and if you look at the ones that you want to work with, you've got to make sure that you're not looking at 5 agencies that all 5, well, not all 5 will go grants.gov, but the ones that, if you're looking for grants, DOE, USDA, National Science, not National Science Foundation, but NIH. They look at grants.gov. So don't pick all the agencies where you have to submit with grants, but don't make grants.gov a criteria or a factor. But remember that grants.gov, even though they ask for a commercialization phase in their proposal, there's some agencies you got to phase 2, and there's no commercialization with the agency. But they still want you to have a good, strong commercialization plan, so they have a sense that you will benefit, and the government could take credit for your benefiting from commercial business, commercial products, commercial sales rather. So it's all of those things. These are the agencies, these are the registrations that you have there. DOD does not require SAM registration until the time of award, but encourages applicants to get it in when submitting. So if you see what they're saying there, don't wait until whether you get an award or not, because you may not get SAM's approval when you do it, even though you got an award. So you don't have SAMs and you got an award. Well, the government is not going to give you an award if you don't have SAMs. So they're saying you don't have to submit it in any preloaded time. But we suggest that we encourage you to submit it when you're submitting your proposal. So we know that you're in the loop there. It says, note SAM registration is not required before the SBIR.gov registration either. So between DOD and SBIR.gov, which is the SBA, they don't require it. It doesn't mean that you don't try and get it out of the way and get it done. Put it in your schedule to make sure that it gets done at the time of submission. So, got a lot of registration work to be done. Program differences between agencies. There's an award logistics, how awards are made. The type of award could either be a contract or a grant. Financial details, indirect costs and rates, and the dollar amount of award, slight differences. So everybody does, depending on the agency, if they do contracts or grants, that's it. Not all agencies do one or the other. There's some agencies that do both. Financial details, indirect costs and rates. You've got to have a good budget and a good financial plan with indirect and direct costs and what your rates are. Dollar amount of the award is always going to be slightly different. Not everybody gives $252,000 for phase 1 or $1.5 million for a phase 2. The amounts vary depending on what you say it will take to do what they're asking you to do. Grants versus contracts, the granting agencies, and I mentioned that only 5 agencies do grants, and the rest of them do grants and contracts. So if you look at the HHS, 95% of what they do are grants. Okay? They do, HHS does 5% of their work in contracts, and that's the purchase of anthrax, or if you find something for COVID-19, they're going to buy something, almost certain that they're going to buy something from from the developers of the COVID-19 vaccine. So, Department of Education does grants. The Department of Education also does contracts. Okay. A little bit more on grants and contracts. Granting agencies are much more flexible than contracting agencies. Small businesses can define a problem in broad topic terms. So, some small businesses can define a problem in broad topic areas. Meaning that you could propose a topic. I mentioned trending, things that are trending, things that are out there that everybody's struggling with and so on, the environment, the changing in weather patterns, there's a lot of different things. So the small business can define a problem in broad topic areas. Vaccines, you could tell them what is it that you think will work for a certain virus or something like that. Contracting agencies, on the other hand, topics are very specific and articulate. They're very specific and articulate defined problems. The bottom line is that there's no wiggle room in there. They're asking for what they want, and they're trying to make it as clear and specific as possible, because the possibility is that they will contract it from you after you finish with phase 1 or phase 2, either the SBIR or STTR program. Agencies like DOD, we talked about, keep using the boots example, but there's no wiggle room in that boot. If you have to do the test in the field of IEDs, you wouldn't want to make something that might or might not work, or does not meet the specification exactly. So you have to deal with defined problems. Seek creative solutions to mission-specific problems. That's what contract agencies do. They're seeking creative solutions to mission-specific problems. If you don't have a solution to a mission-specific problem, a direct and a very special and specified solution, don't bother just sending something in to see if it will work, knowing yourself that, well, this doesn't satisfy the whole picture. So make sure that what you're submitting satisfies very specific, because the problems are very defined in the contracting agencies area.
Hi, Ralph, I just wanted to let you know that we have people who are having to leave, so I don't know if you want to start wrapping this up. And we also have a couple of questions.
Yeah, we're at wrap-up session here. I got two or three more slides. And these are just comments that I'm making. I'm answering frequently asked questions. Eligibility is determined at the time of award, not at application. Appendices are not allowed in phase 1. The PI is not required to have a PhD or an MD, but is required to have expertise to oversee projects scientifically and technically. Applications may be submitted to different agencies for similar work, but awards may not be accepted for duplicative projects. If you submit an application to 2 agencies and both of them give you an award, you've got to go tell one of them that I got an award from another agency for the same thing. I'm going to take theirs and not yours. Benefits: quick money, little paperwork, and a lot of privacy. Cash revenues, usually in advance of the work. You don't have to do the work and then get paid. Keep technology and intellectual property ownership. The technology and the intellectual property still belongs to the small business. It doesn't go anywhere, at least not for some time. Keep equity. The money that you get from the agency is non-diluted, and so they don't want a piece of the money back or a share of the action or anything like that. like an angel investor or a VC or somebody. It preserves cash for operations. You keep your cash, whatever you have, keep it for operations, and you never have to pay it back. Most advantageous entree into the federal contracting environment. When you get a phase two, sometimes very rarely, but when you get a phase two, it is likely that the government will buy something from you, and there's no competition. They don't put that out for bid anymore. Once you get a phase two award and something, the booths that we're talking about, the government doesn't go out and say, well, you satisfied or phase two, you've got a booth that works and so on, and we're going to put this out for bid for everybody to bid on it. No. Once you've satisfied the phase two award and they've got a contract to buy something, they have to buy it from you because they spent the tax dollars. They spent tax dollars to pay for that phase two, and by right they have to give you the contract, and they have to keep giving you. If every year it comes up for a bid because they want more, they have to keep giving it to you. So that's called a sole source advantage that you might have with one of the biggest buying and purchasing customers that you might have in the world. Couple of takeaway messages. The world's largest and most unique investor, 80,000 projects funded, 19,000 firms served, 24 billion under management, 2.3 billion in new funding placed every year, 5,000 projects funded each annually, 11 federal agencies handing out the money. SBA has oversight and responsibility, and entrees to billions in follow-on opportunities. Takeaway message: SBIR, one of the most important sources of early-stage venture financing for America's entrepreneurs. And if you need support, proposal evaluation and review and feedback, you can get that from the PTAP. Training and counseling you can get from the PTAP. Contact the Maryland Procurement Technical Assistance Center.